Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ramesh. I'll be hosting the webinar SIG Talk today about quality and sorry, about quality testing and tips and tricks. Welcome to today's SIG Talk for quality testing covering project portfolio, logging, and use with artificial intelligence. Today's SIG Talk is hosted, moderated by me, Ramesh Subramaniam. I've been working on Mercury tool. It's been a long time. Quality Center, Test Director, ALM, Octane, PPM, BSM, everything. So just want to kind of share my experience on all the product from the beginning. Today's presenter will be Ricardo, VP of Innovations, Emerging Technologies, Softec. During and after the webinar, if you have any questions, one way to get them answered is via Twitter hashtag #VividSigTalk. We'll be monitoring the Twitter throughout after the webinar. Couple of housekeeping I would like to go through today. Today's live session will be intended for all the Vivid members. The on-demand recording slide deck will be posted on the Vivid website, visible for all the members. Additionally, today's slide deck on on-demand recording will be available to you. We will be sending you the link via email once posted to the website, Vivid website. If you have any questions as we go along, please send them in your using question panel in the webinar control panel shown on the right next slide. So if you see that, you'll see a couple of options there: sharing webcam, dashboard, attendees, polls, and questions. So you can click on the expand questions panel, and you can write your questions and send them to us. So now let's get started, and I'll pass this control over to Ricardo. Ricardo, please take a control.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. Please feel free to contact me at Twitter at High Maturity. And if you have any questions, obviously use the chat. I would like to start with a poll, a big question. How many of you have started an artificial intelligence pilot or something more advanced in your organization? You could either raise your hand, and we will have like a quick telling of how many guys started, or use the chat and send a message saying you had. But it will be interesting to understand how many of you actually start a pilot of artificial intelligence of some kind in your organization. And if you haven't, maybe you could share why you haven't, or you're interested on, just in the case we don't have anyone that actually had started a pilot. So I will start the presentation, and if you could actually answer the question, either raise your hand again or with the chat. So a little bit of the agenda. I'm gonna explain a little bit what I do in Softec, and especially spend a couple of minutes on the PPM landscape we have, because I think will be interesting for some of you guys to understand what kinds of things we actually do, how is the landscape, how big is the implementation, and things like that, right? Thank you, Craig. You actually share with us that he already started a pilot in his organization. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the innovation models that we use in SoftTech, and so how we drive all these innovations and artificial intelligence pilots, right, in the organization. We're going to talk a little bit in details about 7 examples we had used artificial intelligence plus PPM, right, and how we are dealing with it, and we will finish with challenges, right? It's about half an hour, and this is intended to be as interactive as possible. So if you guys at any time you have any questions, please let me know. Right? Perfect. Somebody raise your hand. So we have Craig. Perfect. Okay, it seems to be only one pilot going on over there, but perfect. Let me move on. So speaking about the PPM landscape, right? We have more than 2 million requests created, more than 160 workflows, more than 400 portlets, more than 50 interfaces, more than 16 work in real time, a lot of timesheets, right? And also, in any given point, we have more than 240 active projects, right? There are maybe some questions about which version of PPM. We have several instances. In the cloud, we have 9.4. On premise, we have 9.32. And we would actually deal with both, right? We have a couple of different cloud instances, and on premise is one, but it's a really big one, right? It handles most of the workflow. Obviously, again, if there is any questions related to that, welcome. And let me just talk a little bit about the interfaces, because this is usually really interesting when people start talking about these kinds of things they are interested in. I just went to Dallas and give a conference similar to this one in the new Micro Focus Forum. And there was a lot of interest in this slide. Obviously, we use PPM as a digital governance tool in SoftTech. So we integrate all the work we do for clients. SoftTech, what we do is we do IT operations, agile development, digital operations, innovation services, application maintenance and support, and big deals of outsourcing, where we put the focus on being a digital partner and help you have your digital governance, right? So we have customers that use Jira and Microsoft and Visual Studio Team Services and ServiceNow and Fortify and Remedy, or it used to be Peregrine and now it's part of BMC, IBM, Open Service, Veracode, obviously Micro Focus ILM, even PPM, right, and Rally and many others. So we have a lot of different systems where we interface and we get the data from PPM, and that's why we start thinking about the possibility of using artificial intelligence, because we have all this data and all these things we could done with the tool, that we were really interested in going one step further, right? Let me move on. I actually run the labs in SoftTech. That means that we have several different locations where we have researchers doing some research, creating digital products, and that's what we call it, a lab, right? There are several kinds of labs. Well, sometimes when I talk about a lab, people think in chemical products or in maker spaces. But in this case, we were talking about machine learning researchers, machine learning engineers, mixed reality engineers that are trying to create these kinds of products, right? We believe that artificial intelligence and cognitive automation we will have in the next 3 to 5 years the biggest impact of all, right? We believe that machine learning, cognitive robotic process automation. That means you are able to automate, but being smarter than usual, right? Conversational user interfaces and cognitive advisors will transform every single industry around the planet, right? So we started with several different things in the lab with our automation platform, but that's why actually the PPM services we have in Softec also are under my belt. So we started, as Microsoft said, eating or on that food. I'm sorry, or eating. I mean, drinking your own champagne. Also, it's another way that people talk about this. Um, and we say how we could explore the project manager's ability to actually being able to make decisions for them, automate some of the job, improve the way the risk management is being done, improve the way their issues are being drafted, ensuring that we are taking the right categories for risk sources and for risk categories, and helping every single guy that goes to PPM in Softec a little bit, but in a meaningful way, right? So that's what started all this, and we have like a couple years doing this with PPM, and lately has improved a lot, and the usage of these capabilities has going exponential, right? We also are doing a little bit of mixed reality and PPM. We have some proofs of concept, some pilots going on how we are visualizing, for example, PPM requests in a virtual reality environment or in an augmented reality environment. That's a little bit more far-fetched, as you could see in the slide. It's at the end of the chain, but again, being a lab, we like to actually play with these ideas and eventually have something ready when the market is it's mature enough, or when we found value as we have found with artificial intelligence, right? So again, if somebody has a question about what we are thinking, or an idea of how we could use mixed reality, right, in this project management space, please send it, and I would love to discuss it either in the webinar or later, right? So let me move a little bit further. Now we have a lab, and we have this innovation model. We select and capture ideas from the 12,000 people in Softec, right? And some of those ideas are really good and get funneled through this stage gate process, and eventually become at the point here, right? And let me just put it a little bit here, right? Oh, where hold on, where we could actually accelerate them, and it's this gate where we put some additional resources. For example, we use the lab as a resource to develop that idea further. We have machine learning labs, robotic process automation, mixed reality, as I mentioned, right? The other thing, we have an automation platform that helps us automate some of this process, and we do a lot of hackathons to see how we could improve PPM and the project management work or arena in Softec, to many other topics also, but in this case is relevant to the project management ideas. Okay, and the other thing is we are obsessed measuring everything. So of the many ideas we have implemented, we are, and I think that's a tip, right? We're fast to actually kill the ideas that doesn't provide all the value, and we believe that's a way to actually doing things faster and will provide better value. I don't know if there's any questions. Obviously, please point it out. Otherwise, I will move further a little bit. We have a lot of attention going on, so it's good. Now, let me just briefly explain you a simple model you could use to implement a small strategy for any business problem that's based or it's in the space of artificial intelligence. we developed this, and we have been really successful making even business user understand this outside of SoftTech and inside of SoftTech with this small model, right? First you got to understand what's the input. I mean, if you're a project manager and you want to make a decision, what are your decision drivers or the input you use to make a decision? For example, let me just put an example I just did talk about it is you need to categorize a risk, right? You have what's the input? Probably at least the risk description, right? And maybe which project is it, which program, or which epic, right? You're talking about. So that's sort of the input data. And next, what's need to be, what's the prediction, the pitch, what prediction, what's going to be predicted. In this particular case I am using, the prediction is going to be the category of the risk, right? The artificial intelligence going to take the description and going to make a prediction of which category should it belong, right? Okay, so what's the action that has to be implemented? Well, the action is that prediction should be put in PPM as the category, right? And probably will mean that I will have an associated source for that category. That's the action. And the number 3 is we already make the prediction, we put it in PPM, we fill a couple other fields, and the question is that prediction was right? It's that outcome. It was it right? Did at the end the project manager make the decision to change the predicted value and move it from that prediction to another one, for example, from category, let's say HR category to natural disaster category. Just to put some examples that will be easily understood, right, or differentiated. And that's the outcome. It was the outcome is was it good or not? Do we have any feedback? And then what we do is to actually bring that information back as feedback and see how we could learn it from it, either autonomously or with some human being involved, right? And that feedback works and help train the system again. So in 6 small steps, I think you have an idea how these kinds of artificial intelligence business problems work out. And probably if you have some experience with it, you may have some feedback or see if you are actually have an idea. Okay, let me see. There are some questions. Yes, I am talking to the input. So it's the implementation of PPM. Do your tools help you with other PPM tools? Yes, we have used these kinds of things with external third-party applications that are not Microfocus or used to be HPPPM, right? And Sue, if I don't answer your questions, please send another. Okay, the T is train. All this feedback, Sandra, goes back and train the system. Yes, we made it. So we made this work with HPPPM, and actually every single example in this presentation will be based on HPPPM. Now Microfocus PPM. Yes. So, for example, so this risk is a risk request on PPM, and it has a category, right? Or design requires that project leaders or team members that also create risk, categorize it, and add or associate a source with the PPM. Okay, let me go back. It's the I is input, the P is prediction, the A is action, O is outcome, T is in training, and F is feedback. Is that right? So, for the other guys, I am getting some questions, so I'm trying to answer them right away. So if you have a question, the question was, what were the letters again? If I could repeat the flow, it's input, prediction, action, output, training, and feedback. Okay, but again, I think this is a really easy way to understand these artificial intelligence problems and to put some framework around it. I think what's interesting is the lines show how the flow actually goes. Right, you start with a training that makes a prediction, and then you start with all the cycle again. Okay, I'm gonna move ahead, and the next 3 slides, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the actual examples of how we implement this in PPM. Obviously, I talk about risk management being one of the biggest part of it because we have thousands of risks. Another one is defect management. We also have categories with if anyone also implement, for example, some kind of testing application, maybe Microfocus or another one. If you could actually comment on that on the chat, will be helpful because we use a lot of these talking about actual defects and defect management and or orthogonal categories and how we improve the software process based on checklists that are based on these defects. So defects are a big thing in SoftTech, and some of these workflows are through PPM. So it's another example where we are using artificial intelligence. Okay, there's a question. Hold on. Risk management. Okay. Yes, let me go. So, for example, in our PPM system, every risk has a category associated because we do some analysis. We are a CMMI level 5 company. So every risk description or every risk request is associated by a category, and another thing is called a source. What's the source of the risk? So that it's internal categorization we may require for risk management. Is that understood, Sue? Thank you very much for the clarification, and I will move on unless another question is presented. So what I'm going to do is present 2 slides with 3 different usage of artificial intelligence, additional usage from the ones I had mentioned. Yes, they are attributes of risks in our risk management system. Sue is asking about what the categories and how the categories play in this risk management, and she's asking if these are attributes of the risk, and yes, they are. So they are properties that we require our project managers include in the risk management system. Probably will be a good idea. Maybe if we have some time, may I be able to show. I'm not sure, but otherwise I could follow up via email and showing you one of the risk requests we had, so you understand better that part. So hold on. Okay. Thank you, Sue. Okay, there's some feedback based on the request. Okay, so let me go back to this slide. We have 3 different slides, right? Excuse me, 2 different slides with 3 uses each. How artificial intelligence improve or DevOps or strategic speed initiatives increase automation, right? Okay, everything that could be done by an individual in 1 second or 2, a decision that has to be done, it could be improved in some way with artificial intelligence, right? So, for example, again, in the risk example, if I am going to need to make a categorization, it's usually something that for a human being takes 1 minute or 2, or excuse me, 1 second or 2, and that could be done by artificial intelligence. The other thing we do, we try to increase automation in everything a project manager needs to redo. For example, if it has to pull information from SAP through PPM, we do that with either an integration or automated process. We try to make our managers only input information once, if possible, or for example, we even automate capture of information, where there are projects where we use artificial intelligence as a pilot in this case to capture hours. We need hours, or we require hours to be input under tasks or requests in PPM. So we are exploring in this arena to see how we could better help our team members and project leaders in this regard, right? The other way we do it, we use interactive natural language interfaces, also known as chatbots, right? Chatbots are one of the main interfaces we are looking to feed data into PPM. Again, with risks, instead of going to PPM and create a risk, we use a chatbot, and the chatbot asks you the questions that are required, and the chatbot goes into PPM without human intervention after getting all the data from you and create a risk request, and then the workflow moves naturally. Do I explain myself in this example? We also do that with issues and with other tickets we have on PPM. Right. Thank you for the feedback. And I think that's a pretty cool scenario of chatbots, and it's exciting part where people don't have to go to another system or to link back into PPM unless they go to make a different choice or a decision, right? Other thing we're doing, for example, with chatbots, and it's going to connect with the last example in this slide. It's optimized resource allocation. We're doing, for example, how many of you, if you could put a message on the chat or something, that how many of you are using, for example, resource management in PPM? Just to have an idea of how many people will be interested in this kind of example. Could you put, if you could put in the chat or raise your hand? All right, we have a couple hands. It seems like 6 or 7 at least people are having this 7, 8. Yeah, I think we have a good enough scenario in this case. Thank you, David and Devin, and thank you. Okay, so if you're using resource allocation, you probably realize in PPM that's actually, hold on, okay, to see resource management. Perfect. Thank you, Sue. For example, when you have a staffing profile and you have a resource manager, the resource manager has to assign, or when a project leader require load, the resource manager is actually able to fulfill or match that request. And 90% of the time they allow it if they are able to do it. I mean, if in the system that's something the project leaders could see, if the system is available, they will allow that request. So we actually create artificial intelligence that make that choice for them and automates that. So you probably could go to a chatbot and request for a given resource for a given time frame, and the system will go and see if they could optimize resource allocation with this system. And if, according to the algorithm, the most probable thing for a resource manager is to actually approve it, it will approve. Otherwise, if it's unsure or it will say no, it goes to the resource manager in the regular way. So these help a lot of the resource management time and also speed up the assignment of resources. And so I think that works really well, and it's one of the things that take the most time from people. And you could use these kinds of tools that are not rocket science, but are interesting examples of how to do it, to actually help them have a nicer job, right? We have discovered that it has increased engagement in significant amounts, and in the resource management piece, it has reduced attrition because some of the resource managers don't want to spend their time doing that. Let me see. Okay, so you have a question, or well, probably is the same one than before. Okay. Let me go further. Okay, the other slide is gonna be another 3 examples of how we increase. Okay, of how we are doing this. Okay, now automate decisions. Some of the decisions that a project manager has to take, it's either, for example, vacation-related decisions, approving some risks or other risks, approving some issues. As I mentioned before, the resource managing example is one of those examples of doing that. Approving hours, for example, we apply algorithms, and most of the hours are being or timesheets, let me say it that way, or the timesheets have been approved automatically. Some of them not, because we are not there yet, or we are looking at most of the things, either an exception, something that you should take care of. And hold on, I have some questions. Okay, let me see. Somebody asked me if in the scenario I was talking in, is it was using staffing profiles or something similar for resource assignment. It's not the only scenario available, but it's possible. And the other example is, let me see if I could. I think I already answered that question. Okay. Okay. So automate decisions. We try to think this as an artificial intelligence first, and saying which decisions cannot be automated by a human being and which ones are not. Are not. For example, what we are doing, you don't require to use a staffing profile, but there's a lot of manual work when you use it. So if you're using it, we could help reduce the burden. Otherwise, it may be less problematic. And the other thing is really interesting, that the second one in this case is how we improve analytics and diagnostics. We have integrated with PPM simulations or project cost and project scaling. So a project manager could go into PPM, understand the curve of effort and cost, and actually try to change part of the process. For example, changing from a waterfall to a agile development, and understand what will change, what will actually improve or not, or decrease performance in some scenarios. And here we are exploring a lot, because we believe this kind of automated diagnostics will exponentially change the performance of a mediocre project manager, and so average project manager, let me say, will improve significantly if we are able to provide them analytics and automated diagnostics. So even they are not average, but they are junior, we also could help them to go and act as good as an experienced project manager. And I'm really interested to hear feedback here. So if you guys have ideas or think this is a bad idea, well, the project managers will hate it. Or on the contrary, I think every time we provide them better tools, they like the idea of what we're trying to do, right? So again, in this particular point of automated diagnostics and analytics, and really would like to understand some of the people that's piloting things, or some ideas you had mentioned. Okay, a good question I have from Sue is, what can be automated? Okay. So the current state of the art, Sue, is anything that takes a couple of seconds, 1 or 2 seconds from a human being, could be automated in artificial intelligence. Okay, in the chatbot side, everything that's actually entered as a request in PPM could be benefit directly by these kinds of chatbot activities. So any request you have in PPM could be turned. We have a platform that would act really fast, could be turned into a chatbot and improve the user experience. Pretty simple. You could go and put in more intelligence on it. But the most important part is a chatbot. It's just another way to input data, a much natural way. For example, how many of you actually use WhatsApp I bet that you probably use WhatsApp or iMessage or some text in message application even more than the email in your cell phone. And the email is one of the biggest applications in your cell phone. So it's natural. Millennials love it, right? So everything that's form related could be automated. For example, if you use WhatsApp, yeah, it's probably the most common thing. No, it was just an example. WhatsApp is not a chatbot. WhatsApp actually doesn't allow external chatbots to work on, but Facebook Messenger allow that, or another tools could help you use that as an. What we have done is we develop a mobile app that acts as a chatbot. So you go to your cell phone and you create a risk, you create an issue, you create a resource allocation request, you create a peer review request. You create even a travel request. We have that in our PPM system right now. So most of the requests in our system could be done through PPM. Okay, let me go back. Somebody asked me, so most of the forms or fields you're gonna use in PPM as requests, right, will be really benefited by using a chatbot as an interface, because what chatbot does, it allows you to easily enter data and manage something that's usually cumbersome in a really familiar way. As many of you had mentioned in the notes and questions, you guys use WhatsApp for many things. So, or other chat, not chat, but chat application or messenger application or Skype or something like that. So it's really familiar and an easy way to do it. You probably get some instructions to your significant other through chatbot or to your assistant or somebody in the organization. You give instructions through these kinds of mediums. Why not using this medium to actually talk to PPM, right, or a Telegram, right, or whatever applications of instant messaging applications you have. Okay, we're time is moving fast, so I think we're okay in that regard. Other thing is the overall problem we're trying to solve is increase developer productivity. Again, every time they go to PPM for something that's not meant to be or that just requires a lot to job, we try to either provide a alternative method like a chatbot or a decision already made for them that they just got to corroborate, or a way to actually increase the value from the developer side. Every time the developer is not being actually creating features with quality, is probably not doing something that adds a lot of value, right? So we try to automate metrics recollection and metrics capture and all these metric-driven things while they do their regular job, right? So the developers just seems to be doing what needs to be done, and we try to recollect as much as possible data from it, right? Okay, just let me check if somebody else. Okay, probably no. Okay, there is not a lot of. I'm gonna finish right with challenge. If you have any questions, please let me know. But I think I'm gonna finish with challenge. There are 5 challenge. Change management. We try to drive PPM a lot, adoption a lot, but not always as easy as it used to be. So the solution is to use chatbots. We have our automation platform, it's called Frida. We develop some mobile extensions for PPM to increase adoption, right? Dashboards and visualization. This is something really interesting because I think, Terry, you're going to have another webinar in a couple of weeks about the new features in the 9.5. I am part of the CAP or the customer advisory boards of the PPM, and I have seen them, and they are improved a lot. They have improved a lot the dashboards and visualizations. We have built some really cool dashboard and visualizations, and I understand that PPM is going to improve them a lot. Um, Okay. Yes. For example, when we try to make them to create every single risk they have in PPM, somebody asked me how the chatbots help. Because they have an alternative method for creating a risk in the middle of a meeting when a risk came out, somebody goes to the chatbot and create a risk right away instead of waiting as an afterthought going to PPM and create a risk. So that help a lot with adoption. I hope I actually answer your question. Otherwise, I could after the fact further go in those regards. Artificial intelligence talent has been a challenge for us. So what we do is we create these labs and we build up the capability. So we have it now, and we continues to do it as a capability enterprise-wide, right? An unexpected challenge because we have made many things easier to do for the people in SoftTech. We have a growing appetite, an enterprise appetite for using more PPM, and we're coping with that with a lot of automation for PPM development. So it's like a meta PPM development, developing tools to make PPM development faster. And again, as I mentioned this example before, the resource management is a complex deal for us. 82% of the employees of SoftTech belong to one or more project, right? So these multiple resource management is interesting, and we use the PPM resource method management intensively to achieve that, right? Yes, and so your question is that chatbot will generate the risk for them, for example, in the middle of the meeting. Okay, those were the 5 most significant challenges I think we have in right now. Again, Vivid, we're gonna have a webinar soon about the 9.5, and I saw some exciting things around dashboards. They are start to moving further and further in that regard. So I will recommend anybody that's not familiar with 9.5 to actually take a look at that webinar. Great. I think we made it in with some time.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. So we are moving on to Q&A session. Please submit your questions on the question panel and send them to us. Be sure to register upcoming webinar listed here, and let your colleagues and customers know as well. We hope you can join us. This is about the project portfolio management, what's new and 9.50, as mentioned by Ricardo earlier.
And Ramesh, I think there's a question around the ROI for SoftTech at the very top. If you could maybe have Ricardo share that with Ricardo and have him talk a little bit about that.
Sure. The question here is like, what has been your ROI on this endeavor?
Well, thank you very much, and that's a really good question. Look, we usually think of ROI in these kinds of projects because they're small and faster to implement in order of magnitude. We usually invest a couple of weeks in this, and we get almost instantaneously in the first month because there are so many users we have in PPM. We have seen a lot of ROI and great ROI with our artificial intelligence users, and there is also an non-economic ROI in user engagement, right? We measure that, and we care about the culture a lot in SoftTech, and there are other aspects, not only economical aspects, that they do make sense economically, obviously, but additionally, I could say that have improved the usage of PPM and increased project manager satisfaction.
The other question I have here is, Ricardo, I remember you mentioned in the slides about mobile app approving the timesheet and the request. So how do
Yes.
you, is that available right now on the 9.40 or 9.50 feature?
Could you repeat the last part?
Is that feature currently available in the PPM, or is it available in the upcoming?
No, that particular part we're referring is something we create. So it's something we have as a separate standalone product that we use for PPM. No, it's not part of the regular or something you could get from Microsoft Microfocus, but we do have available that for some customers, for example.
All right, thank you. The other question here, can you explain how will you evaluate the waterfall agile to help the PM? And I don't recall exactly the point being made.
Oh, it's probably when I talk about simulations, an active simulations we have is how we could help the project managers decide which life cycle should they use. In some engagements, they have to use this life cycle. In other engagements at the beginning of the project, we could propose a life cycle, for example, doing it waterfall or doing agile, and we have simulations based on historical data that could help the manager make a better decision based on a baseline project plan. In a brief, that's the kind of things we could do for managers in order to help them make better decisions based on the life cycle, right?
Right.
Hopefully, I bring more light to that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks, Ricardo. I'm going to take this question. What did PPM logging in the webinar title refers to? So the reference to here is to improve the PPM weather performance by configuring the threshold parameter on the logging by various categories. I would say, like, let's start with like reports, portlets, attachments, request search queries, monitoring DB pool, services, packages, workflow, LDAP integration, notification. So we really identify, like, what are the areas taking the time and efforts by creating a logger on each of the specific categories. Let's move on to next question. What tool do you use a chatbot? Ricardo?
Will you repeat?
What tools do you use AI chatbot?
Okay. Well, we actually develop our own tools to accelerate chatbot creations. But if you, for example, you are referring of the where like, for example, WhatsApp, or we use as a medium, we develop our own application. We have it commercial available, and we also use, for example, Telegram for talking to PPM. But we custom develop accelerators to do that. Hopefully I answered the question.
Yes, thank you. So how do you, follow-up question on that, how do you help them simulate and make better decisions?
Okay, so for example, if you are talking technically or statistically, we use a lot of Monte Carlo simulations to help. So it's probably a follow-up from the question of how we help them, for example, decide which life cycle. We use a Monte Carlo simulation based on historical data and allows the people to actually see a graph of what will be the risk profile of a project based on choice A, like agile, versus choice B, like waterfall. So we use artificial intelligent neural networks and Monte Carlo and simulation techniques to be able to show graphically risk profiles and help them make a decision. Again, that could be a webinar in itself, but if somebody that makes a question will follow me on Twitter or send me a question on Twitter, I gladly give you more or additional details based on that.
think the follow-up question pretty much from Sue, like for when you're simulating or helping the PM know which cycle to use.
Excuse me, could you repeat? I'm sorry.
For when you are stimulating or helping the PM to know which cycle to use.
Okay, from when, right? Is usually, for example, that particular one is usually at the beginning, but when and it's a screen that we custom made in PPM, right? And also, as the project progress, these dashboards and simulations get refreshed, right, with the current performance data. So a decision that you made in the beginning may no longer be valid, and because of the current performance, people is not performing as expected, so the risk increase in real time in PPM.
Thank you, Carlo.
And again, I think that could be a 1 hour follow-up for that. Just send me a Twitter based on it's at high maturity, and I will gladly follow up with you guys if with the ones that are interested.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you for attending today's quality and testing SIG talk. Please be sure to complete the short survey after the webinar ends, as we would love to hear your feedback. Just a reminder that on-demand recording and slide deck will be posted to the Revit website in the next few days. You will receive an email with those links. If you or someone you know would be interested in presenting for upcoming SIG talk, please complete the survey at the link below. Next slide. Can you move on to the next slide, please?
Yep, I think that's the final slide, Ramesh.
Oh.
Right. The only other which we touched on earlier is just to remind everyone, as Ricardo mentioned, there is a PPM webinar that Micro Focus will be delivering next week in the Vivid calendar on May 29th, and that's when they'll go into more detail about the new features in 9.5. So definitely, if you haven't registered as yet, go to the community calendar on the Vivid website and definitely please join. Yes, and the survey will actually pop up when the audience leaves this webinar. So we'd appreciate any feedback, as Ramesh mentioned. And that should be it.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate everybody actually going through the presentation and sticking for the questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.